So in this video I'm going to cover a range of topics, from some background on who I am and how I got to where I am in life, as well as my reasons for running this channel and my hopes for where I would like it to go in the future. To give people something nice to look at, there will be some ride footage playing from a super early morning run I did out to get some fresh air and morning rays. The place is called Kenna Cartwright and has a maze of trails at various levels of difficulty that I'm barely scratching the surface of. The views you get up the city at the top are spectacular. For me, this is the kind of holy grail of bike riding. Jump on and ride with traffic to the trails and then back, all with the same vehicle. The only missing part of the picture now, I guess, is the enhanced PAS features from the NXT to refine the feel of the bike when using the pedal assist. So before we get started, if you want to skip ahead to the channel future stuff and past all the stuff on me and how I got into electric bikes, you can skip ahead to the point shown on the screen or use the timestamps in the description. And before I forget, yes, I've done the 1000 subscribers draw, and I will also drop that video in the next little while, along with some changes to the format going forward to make it a bit more easy for me to manage. So let's start off with who I am. I'm not going to stick my ugly mug on here yet, mainly because I want this to be about the bikes and development of electric vehicles and less about me as a person. I think what I look like is not particularly relevant. Showing you how you can save money and reduce consumption while having fun at the same time is the most important aspect of this channel to me. Maybe like at 10,000 subs you can see my face. But I'm only too happy to tell you about myself. I'm a 42-year-old British expat currently living in British Columbia, Canada. I am father to 2 boys and a husband to my wife. I was born in 1978 in England in a city called Coventry, which is located pretty much dead centre of the UK in geographic location, but sadly not so central economy-wise. When I tell people in Canada that I'm from Coventry, you generally get 3 responses. A blank look, something about being heavily bombed in World War II, or a reference to the 1992 riots. Coventry used to be very well known for its automobile manufacturing, kind of like the Detroit of the UK. But before it became well known for cars, Coventry was an absolute powerhouse when it came to developing and manufacturing the bicycle. One of the first bikes developed and produced in Coventry was the Starley safety bicycle. Up until this design, people have been mostly riding the penny farthing style with the large front wheel. This new design had wheels the same size front and rear, as well as a chain-driven rear wheel, so real high technology for the time. By the middle of the 1870s, Coventry was churning out thousands of bikes every year for export all over Europe. By the 1890s, the Coventry bike industry was the largest in the world. Sadly, it was a relatively short period of time, and by the 20s, or 1920s, local industry had moved on to automobiles, and once they had started making Hurricanes in World War II, it was always going to be a target for the Luftwaffe. You can see this history at Coventry Transport Museum, which is a truly amazing place. It tells the story of both bicycle and motor manufacturing in Coventry, as well as the story of the Blitz and how Coventry's citizens coped and recovered afterwards. It has the world record land speed cars Thrust 2 and Thrust SSC on display, which is pretty cool. When I was a kid, they used to do birthday parties and actually let the kids sit in the cockpit of the car that did 670 miles an hour. Although I was born in Coventry, my childhood was spent a few miles away in a town called Nuneaton, or Treacle Town, as apparently it was referred to by everyone else. I was very lucky in that I had 2 parents who loved me unconditionally and gave me room to grow and a safe framework to develop as a person. I have a lot of really good memories as a family. It wasn't something that I thought much about at the time, but looking back now, with what I know of the world and the people I have met, I feel very fortunate to have had the childhood and upbringing that I did. My parents gave me a love of the sciences and of nature. I have lots and lots of memories of growing food, hiking, walking and camping. One of the biggest influences in my early life came from scouting. I went through all the levels from an early age with beavers to the higher levels, which is more like a supervised youth group where you go for a pint at the end of the night. Scouting taught me how to be resourceful and how to think on my feet, as well as instill teamwork, cooperation, and a sense of my community. When I was 18, I left for university in Hatfield, which is a small town on the outskirts of the big mass that is the London metropolitan area. I was one of these people that went to university to kind of try and discover what I wanted to be, rather than picking a trade or career and then taking the required degree. I actually studied environmental science at university, which I guess career-wise was not the best choice, but in terms of life experience, I think it was well worth the time. In my third year, I was actually able to travel to Guyana in South America and spend 4 months working in the rainforest reserve there. It was a very simple life, but the one that required considerable logistical planning and brought considerable life skills, experience and confidence as a result. I got to work very closely with some members of one of the local Amerindian tribes. I got to say, it's a real eye-opener to see a truly resourceful and self-sufficient person going about their daily business. Living under a tarpaulin with the snakes and bugs certainly has its drawbacks, but waking up for breakfast by howler monkeys and there being so little light pollution that you can read by the stars were definitely bonuses. I do wonder sometimes if people realise the extent to which artificial lighting has robbed us of a view of the cosmos. After I graduated, I ended up needing a job to make ends meet, and like a lot of students leaving university, it's a bit of a shock to realise that you might actually have to do a job that's not your first choice. I didn't really know what I wanted to do anyway, so it was kind of less traumatic for me. I actually ended up working at a call centre for this bank called Kahoot, which was one of the early online-only banks created, I guess, during what you could call the dot-com boom. Gradually, I moved over to the more IT side of things, and a lot of the knowledge I have of 3D modelling, software testing, as well as Photoshop comes from this period in my life. It was a fun time, but eventually the commute got harder and longer, and although working from home would have been really easy, you couldn't do that then because it was a different time. Which pretty much takes me through to 2008 when I met my future wife, who was over in England at university in Loughborough. Or, if you're an Australian, it's Luga Baruga. I never really had any thoughts of leaving the UK long term before. I remember bringing up Cold Lake on Google Earth when I realised that's where she was going to be posted. And I noticed that there were a few aerial shots of it covered in ice still mid-May, and thinking, damn, that really does look cold. But sometimes I think you have to take a leap of faith. So I did, and off it was to Alberta. Cold Lake is an interesting city. It's got a curious mix of locals, farmers, oil workers, military personnel. It's also staggeringly beautiful in a way that I don't think you can fully appreciate until you go there. It's incredibly flat, so you get these massive open skies, sunrise, sunsets, northern lights. It's really stunning. I have to say though, it was bloody cold in the winter. Several weeks the mercury sank to below -40 and just seemed to stay there. But weirdly, in all my 5 winters in Cold Lake, I never got sick once. Maybe something to do with the dry air, I don't know. As a way to meet people, I signed on at the local fire department, and it has to be one of the best decisions I've made in my life. I got to meet many really good people, and I got a good deal of pride out of being able to serve my adopted community. I actually took more of an interest in the medical side of things, and I ended up taking my EMR certificate and my EMT, and I ended up working for the local ambulance society, running emergency calls in the local coverage area with both Alberta and Saskatchewan, and patient transports down to the bigger cities like Edmonton. During this time, I also got to welcome the birth of my first son, which actually involved a 3-hour drive to Edmonton so we could meet up with the midwife, because it was not a very common option in the more rural areas of Alberta. After we left Cold Lake, the next port of call was Kingston, Ontario, which is one of the really historical places in Canada. Much of the early history of Canada, along with various battles with the French Crown and the Yankees, and the establishment as well of various borders and territories, took place here. During this time, we prepared to welcome my second son, and I embarked on another adventure as a stay-at-home dad. There seemed to be very little point in commuting big distances to then give most of my pay to someone else to look after the kids. While definitely challenging sanity-wise, it did give me a lot of time with my children at what is a very fun time of their life. After Kingston, we moved to Gatineau in Quebec, which is not that far, and that's where all of the fun stuff with electric bikes started to happen. I first heard about the BBSHD maybe 5 years ago. I have a friend in Coventry called Tez, and we often talk about things like e-bikes. He actually helped me build my first PC, and it was through him that I learned quite a lot about web development and Photoshop. Tez built a few bikes himself, but it was not something that I looked at in detail until 2016, when our latest military posting saw us move the relatively short distance from Kingston to Gatineau in Quebec. We chose to live in an area with an excellent cycle network, so not only could my wife cycle to work, but I would be able to achieve the school run using a bike trailer that I'd seen online called the Wee-Hoo. So this bike trailer shows up, and after assembly I hooked it up to my Salsa wireframe. It's the same one that's currently actually running my X1 motor. While it worked, I can't say that I ever felt particularly safe with it. The high centre of gravity meant that even a simple wave to the old biddy feed in the docks resulted in a wild wobbling that threatened to send the whole contraption into the closest tree. So I hit on the idea of replacing the Salsa frame with a fat bike for stability. So one specialised fat boy later, and I have to say the transformation was remarkable. The trailer was instantly much more stable and controllable, even with both kids pointing and waving at different things at the same time. I was surprised to learn how nice fat bikes actually feel to ride. The drawback then was that the Ottawa-Gatineau area gets obscenely humid in the summer, so I was arriving at the school pretty much ready to die. It was at this point that research on the BBSHD began in earnest. A lot of the information I found came from YouTube, as well as the Endless Sphere forums and the Electric Bike channel. Contributing to this resource was the primary reason to actually start making my own videos. So I ordered a stock BBSHD kit from em3ev.com. I could have gone with Lunar Cycle, and I guess I nearly did, but the owner of em3ev.com happens to be a Brit who, like me, left the shores of Blighty for a new future abroad, so I kind of felt a little bit of affinity there. I was not disappointed, and I can only report excellent customer service. If you go through the older videos on the channel, you can see lots of adventures around the Gatineau area on a stock BBSHD fat bike. Taking the kids to and from school, as well as visiting parks and playgrounds, has got to be one of the best experiences of my life. I continued to tinker around with the setup of the bike, and at some point I decided to replace the original display on my bike with the Egg Rider V2. The plan was for me to use the bike to commute to work once we had made our final move out to BC at the end of my wife's military service. The Egg Rider would allow me to set up a road legal profile for the bike, so I'd be able to ride it at lower power when needed. So in one of those more fateful moments of life, I ended up buggering the firmware on my stock BBSHD controller with the Egg Rider. The Bafang firmware apparently has a few gremlins in it. I ended up managing to lock mine to half power at 15 amps. Despite lengthy attempts to fix it with Egg, nothing seemed to work. At some point during my attempts to fix the problem, I came across the ERT website, which promised that with an external controller, you could safely run the BBSHD at much higher voltage and power than the stock controller could handle. Not only this, but it will come with a much greater level of control with advanced features such as motor idling. So last summer, I got out some beefy zip ties and strapped that ASI BAC855 to my fat bike. I still very much remember the first time I twisted on the throttle and shot off down the road twice as fast as I had managed previously. From there, I got into experimenting more with the CYC-X1 motor. I was also able to make a friend in Alan who at ERT. Alan had already reached a point where he was able to unlock the potential of the ASI controller and deliver extreme performance over a wide range of motors. The missing link was the display, which required a third party and added in some quite severe limitations on the functioning of the ASI controllers. Alan came to the conclusion, after attempting to work with existing display manufacturers, that the ultimate solution was to bring the display in-house, and thus the concept of the NXT was born. I have a particular skill set that crossed a range of different areas from graphic design to 3D modelling and software testing, so I quickly realised that I'd be able to contribute in the areas of case design and on-screen graphics, and perhaps enable the project to move forward a little bit faster than otherwise. In terms of the future of the channel, I'd like to make it a more interactive experience, so people that would like to contribute either in terms of ideas or even work on projects can do so. I think it'd be really cool if there are other people out there that would like to work together on ideas, so everyone is able to build them within their communities if they should wish to do so. I'm a really big fan of open source and community development. I think that the kind of ideas that I have really lend themselves to this kind of group effort. So I will be using a few of the current tools to establish more of a community and eventually look at bringing this all together with a central website to host it on. I will continue to support and develop my own vehicles as well as working with Alan on the NXT project. The base concept is in place and it's starting to ship out to customers. The next part is to work on enhancing its feature set. The enhanced PAS features are really what I'm excited to develop, and I'm really looking forward to doing some testing with people in the near future. There's also the lighting project, which I'm quietly thinking about, although it's taken a bit of a backseat to my work with the NXT for the time being. The bigger project for the year, though, is to start working on developing a utility trailer or family of trailers to help demonstrate how light electric vehicles can move much more than just people around. Beyond that, I thought we could look at a range of different projects for light electric vehicles, as well as discuss and promote how they could be used to rework our communities to utilise their potential to get about, as well as deliver other important services that right now seem to burn a whole lot of gas and choke our cities with smog and pollution the world over. On a personal level, I've decided that I would like to have some kind of future career with light electric vehicles, or the development of them. So, in part, the channel will also serve as a bit of a resume. I am a bit of what you might term a jack of all trades. I'm not the best at any of the skills that I have, but I am able to combine them in unique ways and come up with unique solutions to problems. I'm hoping that this is a skill set that might get me noticed and lead to a fulfilling career. I'm not a big fan of adverts, so I really don't want to force watching them down people's throats. I'm not doing this to make lots of money, and the money that I think adverts would generate is so minor, I don't really think it's worth people's time for the few cents that it would generate. So, no adverts on here. I'm not very good at the whole promotion thing anyway. I'd much rather use the time that I have for working on e-bike projects. That said, if I can get more resources, I can build more stuff and share more ideas with the community. In terms of supporting the channel, I'm going to use the Patreon system for anybody that would like to financially contribute to the channel and maybe take part as well in any of the community-based projects I set up. I'll also do the PayPal thing as well as a way to make a one-off donation. So if my videos help you build your bike and you just wanted to buy the Captain a pint, that would be cool as well. So at the end of my videos going forward, I'll leave details on how you can do either of these two things. The Patreon website also allows me to post various 3D files, models and bits that I make. So as well as posting things for projects, I can also put up my various creations for supporters to download and use on their own bikes if they should wish to do so. Longer term, I will look at hosting a development site where various files such as models and plans can be stored for access. Please don't feel like you need to do any of this. I'm going to be pushing ahead regardless. But if you did find my videos useful or I saved you some time, maybe throw the Captain a doubloon or two. Rest assured, any funding I get is only going to go on the further development of the ideas here into hopefully technology that you can build and use yourself. The next video I do is going to revisit the CYC X1 Pro and go over some of the things that I've learned. Kind of like a 6-month review of how I've been finding the motor. What do I recommend in terms of the battery and all that good stuff. We also have a re-grease job to do on the BBSHD, so it'll be interesting to see what the inside looks like after thousands of miles of trouble-free service. In terms of projects, I'll be looking to continue work with the bike lanes, as well as start a new project to build a trailer, or ideally a family of trailers, that can be used for a range of cargo and personal transportation within our cities and towns. I also have some new batteries being made at Lightspeed, so I'll be looking forward to doing some really nice long rides and exploring the local area in much more detail later this year. Thanks for watching, and your support is very much valued. Cheers!